It's about that time to open up the Peacock and Williamson mailbag. Emmitt Smith, is his rushing record safe? Which quarterbacks are under the most pressure in surprise playoff teams? On today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers. We love it when you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. So we're hitting the mailbag hard today. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. All right. Here's a good one from Crime Dog is where we are going to begin. Crime Dog's been getting in some good questions here on the weekly mailbags. And guys, at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL is where to drop those questions. You can always drop a question in the YouTube comments as well. And Crime Dog asks, is Emmitt Smith's all-time rushing record of 18,355 yards unbreakable? Will we even see a modern running back hit 12,000 yards again? Backs like Christian McCaffrey might get 20 touches a game, let alone 30-plus carries. Starting to think Emmitt's record is like Ted Williams batting 400. Never again. Thoughts?
100%. I think it's like Gretzky's scoring record, or I'm sure there's others in sports, that
more
are
likely that someone hits 400 in baseball than that gets because that could just be one fluky season where someone's red hot and you can hit 400. But it's more like Cal Ripken's streak, right? Because with load management and how often people play, games played, and how often you're given the football, even the guys that get it the most don't get it as often as the guys used to as well. So that it is pretty much in unbreakable territory at this point. Basically, it happened the day Barry Sanders retired.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like Cal Ripken's streak if he hit 300 every year and 30 homers. Like he'd have to be, and you're great, So I pulled up the all-time leaders just to kind of dig into it. And he's over 18,000 yards. And I think we could all do the math that 18 1,000-yard rushing years. Is anyone ever going to do that?
Well,
No.
Frank Gore had a streak of 8 straight, I think, 1,000-yard seasons or something like that.
Which is great.
Which is awesome. And he played for 15 years, and he still came up over 2,000 yards short. 16,000 on the dot for Frank Gore. Number 3 all-time, by the way. And he had to bounce around to 5 teams, play for 15 years, and still was not able to get within, 2 Pro Bowl seasons worth of Emmitt Smith.
Yeah, and I want to bring him up in a second, but I mean, could anyone have, no one's going to have 18,000, 1,000-yard seasons. Is anyone going to have 12, 1,500-yard rushing years? Of course not. That's what it takes. To put it in perspective, Gore and Adrian Peterson, I thought were interesting because Gore ended up 3rd, Peterson ended up 5th. And I'm just talking about recent guys that we all remember. But boy, they lasted a really long time. And their style of play almost sounds like a dinosaur, especially Peterson. His inability to catch the ball, like as awesome as Peterson was coming out of Oklahoma, I think he'd be a first-round pick still, but he's no way a top 10 pick. And he might even fall to the early 2nd round. And Gore's different because of the knee, and he lasted forever. But still, as you mentioned, well over 2,000 short. So Derrick Henry is the
That's exactly where I was going to go next is Derrick Henry.
And he's at 9,500. But he's 36th all time. 36th. And let's say he puts up 1,000 this year for the Ravens. Very possible, and I bet he does, to be honest with you. That moves him to like 26th. Jamal Lewis, Thomas Jones land. Even if he does another 1,000-yard, that gets him to like Fred Taylor at 17. So, these guys, I think Henry's a Hall of Famer because by his contemporaries, he's a total freak. But even if he puts up 3,000 yards over the next 2 years, he's ridiculously short. He's like 15th on the list. He's Franco Harris.
He needs to double his career.
He needs to double his career. Yeah.
He's 9,500 yards. He needs 9,000 more yards to break Emmitt Smith's record. I mean,
Zeke Elliott's second. He has to double his career.
Yeah.
I mean, like, come on. I mean, he may not get to 10,000. He's at 8,900.
Doubling Zeke's career wouldn't be enough.
Doubling Zeke's career would not be enough. And he's shot.
They both in the league the same year in 2016. So that's 8 seasons, right?
Right. I mean, I mean, could a Bijan or somebody like that just light the world on fire and last forever? Maybe, but that probably ends up with 12,000, not 18. Like, look at the third and fourth leading rusher in the league right now. It's Latavius Murray and Melvin Gordon. You know, I mean, Christian McCaffrey only has a little over 6, and he's had a remarkable career. Chubb only has a little over 6. Dalvin Cook, great careers. Kamara is under 6, and they'd have to triple their careers.
Who could possibly handle the load and play long enough? And will any player, even if they could handle the load, be allowed to? It's like going back to the baseball thing. Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan can't exist anymore. Nobody will allow a player to become Nolan Ryan to throw that many pitches. Nobody will allow somebody to become Emmitt Smith. You would have to be in the perfect situation like Emmitt was behind an amazing offensive line and get 300 carries a year and then stay healthy through that. And so none of those things combined are going to happen. One of the three probably can't happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure one of the three can happen. Yeah, right. I mean, it's the perfect storm. And, oh, by the way, he's awesome. You know, I mean, like, I feel like we always sell Emmitt short. He had a lot to do with this 18,000, obviously.
So Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore came close enough to where you could have seen a scenario where it happened for them if maybe something changed a little bit. Frank Gore had 2 extra years on Adrian Peterson, by the way. Frank Gore came in the league in 2015 or 2005, excuse me. Played 15 years through 2020, and Adrian Peterson had played one more year, but not a lot in that last year in 2021.
Right. They both hung around with various teams for a while,
right? 2007, but even the league in 2005 and 2007, when those guys came in, is so much different than it is.
That's what I was going to say too. Yeah.
And so even if, you had, Adrian Peterson, you get another shot at it. And I think he was the best pure runner of, the most recent generation of running backs. Okay. Rookie Adrian Peterson, you get to start over. Let's do it again. He probably falls short of his own rushing mark because they don't run the ball as much now as they did in 2007 when he came in the league.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is Frank Gore or Adrian Peterson could enter the league with their workhorse mentality, and they still would not get close to the same carries per game or carries per season. And the seasons are longer too. I mean, I think, you could look at it that way. Like, well, there's more games now. So if 10 years could get me further than it did before, but it's also beats the crap out of you.
And you would need a guy that obviously longevity would have to be a massive part of this. You would have to be able to hang around in the league until your late 30s. And probably one advantage you might have over Emmitt is Emmitt went to college. Would he come out 1 year early, which is like, as early as anybody would come out back then, right? After your junior year.
Good point. Yeah.
Maybe a guy comes in at 20 years old and he's already got 15 years down by the time he's 35 and he's still got a few more in him. Could that possibly be a route? I mean, it's unbreakable, like 0.000% chance. I don't know if I want to say that, but man, it's pretty
one of the most unbreakable. Yeah. I mean, I could see DiMaggio's hitting streak getting broken. I mean, it doesn't even mean you're the best player in the league. I mean, the longevity's matched with being super productive is crazy. And last little nugget is, I think it's a great point about age coming into the league, because when I was at Pitt, Adrian Peterson was being recruited. And back then we get these VHS tapes of like the top 100 recruits in the country. And frankly, we weren't getting any, but for fun, I'd watch them.
Yeah.
And, and he was like number 1 or 2. And frankly, of all the high school football players I ever saw, I thought Peterson was the most equipped to just skip college like Kobe Bryant. As an 18-year-old, remember Maurice Claret almost did that? I watched his tape too. They weren't even close. I mean, But still, even if he did that, he wouldn't have this record.
So here's one more little wrinkle to this. And I'm looking at active players, and I was just trying to think, okay, any active player, could I even see them being like, okay, should we watch this guy? Could this guy maybe be the one? And you look at Saquon Barkley, who's 140th all time, 5,000 rushing yards. He's already missed seasons because of injury, but, super talented guy. Could he play for a long time and get close? But you know who's just ahead of Saquon Barkley on the active player career rushing mark? Lamar Jackson. Would it
that's kind of interesting.
Would it be a quarterback? And maybe not even Lamar Jackson, but some future quarterback with the league running the ball more as a quarterback who could play to the age of 40 and maybe
put up 800 yards a year, 600 yards a year.
Could a quarterback be the one that breaks the record and potentially even have like a 2,000-yard rushing season in there?
Wow. That's an interesting thought. I mean, if Josh Allen or Lamar plays into their 40s, of course they won't run as much at the end as they do now. I don't think they can get to 18,000, but I could see a quarterback being really high on this list someday. 10,000.
The league is changing and offenses are changing, so it could get to the point where you are seeing Lamar Jackson came into the league the same year as Saquon, has more career rushing yards. I think that's the best way to put it.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I mean, they have a better chance of staying healthy. They're going to protect themselves better. They're not going to run up the gut for 3 yards over and over and over and get beat up.
Right.
I mean,
and you might be able to be, 41 years old and still have 500 rushing yards.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, whoever the quarterback leading rusher of all time is, I assume it's Vic, is in big trouble. Like that record will fall big.
That Lamar Jackson will own whatever that record is, and then could does he end up with 10,000 rushing yards? He's already got 5,000.
Yeah, and then Jalen Daniels pays 15 years. He's going to end up with 10,000 rushing yards probably.
And is there a guy we don't know about yet that is the one?
Many,
and I would say we don't know who that player is yet. If Emmitt's rushing record does go down.
Because those guys are going to have so much higher yards per carry too, and then they'll slide or duck out of bounds, or
it almost hurts you to be like, you bring up who's the best running back recently, and we're gonna move on from this topic. But like Bijan, Bijan catches the ball too well. He'll probably have to, like McCaffrey too. It's like, you're going to throw to him too often for him to have them in
the rushing yards.
You almost need someone like Derrick Henry, who you just rather hand the ball to than throw it to him anyway.
Exactly. I mean, is another Henry going to come in the league? And back to the original point, he's so far away, and he's been unbelievable.
Yeah, and he's the closest thing you could think of.
Yeah, I mean, he's 36th right now. I mean, he's right ahead of Sean Alexander, behind Chris Johnson, behind Matt Forte and Joe Perry. Like it's a totally different conversation. But to me, Henry and Zeke should get really strong Hall of Fame, consideration. Even though tons of guys have more rushing yards ahead of them are not Hall of Famers. It's the anti-wide receiver Hall of Fame argument. You know what I mean? Like 10,000 yards today is like 15,000 yards 2 decades ago on the ground.
18 games coming.
Yeah.
Eventually it'll be 20 games. Someone's going to break it. All right.
I don't think they'll break Emmitt even with 20 games. I mean, no one's getting 400 carries anymore.
Which quarterbacks are under the most pressure in 2024? And what about some surprise playoff teams from the Peacock and Williamson mailbag next? This episode of P&W is sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and it's winner take all time right now in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big victory of your own. And how about a series of victory like those NBA and NHL teams are trying to accomplish? And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 extra to play with and bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more at FanDuel. You don't want to bet on the NBA or the NHL? That's okay. Major League Baseball. All summer long, there's games to bet on. And of course, this is an NFL podcast. You want to bet on NFL futures in the 2024 NFL season, offensive and defensive rookies of the year, the next Super Bowl champion, and tons more. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Surprise playoff teams, Matt. Looking around the NFL, are there some teams, and the teams that have not been great recently, but it's a little bit easier to say, like, okay, well, Atlanta Falcons there, or any team in the South, basically. A surprise, like a true surprise team that'd be like, oh, wow, that team made the playoffs. If you looked into the future a little bit, do you have one of those teams in mind?
Not really. So this is the way I viewed that question: is who would even qualify as a surprise team? So I went division by division. The Patriots in the East, I think, are the only one that would qualify as a surprise team. I can't write any story that they go to the playoffs. I don't think there's any in the North. I guess the Titans, maybe they could sneak in if Levis takes a huge step. Maybe. Stroud gets hurt.
That's why, you look at the Falcons, you look at, all the teams with young quarterbacks. An improved quarterback situation is the best path for a team to do that. And could Will Levis be that for the Titans? New regime.
A lot of changes, I mean, there's a lot better sporting cast, different coach for better or worse. O-line should be respectable for once.
What are they going to look like on defense is my question.
It worries me a lot.
Yeah.
But they added like Snead and, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah.
But if Stroud gets hurt and the Jags win 9 games, could Tennessee win that division? Possibly. I mean,
and that'd be
I didn't think Houston could win the division a year ago.
Right. Yeah. Last year it was the Houston Texans were the surprise team, and that would have surprised us and would not. And now we expect it. That's how that's how quickly things can change because you got the right quarterback in place. So I like that one a lot, actually.
Do the Chargers count? I don't think that'd be a surprise team. I mean, their win total's higher than I think it should be. Do they count as a surprise team?
Yeah, man.
They're borderline to me. I didn't know if I should make the list.
Worse than it was last year, but I think Harbaugh brings enough hype that it would be less surprising than it should be based on their roster. I'd be kind of surprised, to be honest with you. But again,
I would be shocked.
They got a successful coach with track record, and they got a good quarterback. It's a pretty good place to start from, even if the rest of the roster might need a little work. And by the way, they didn't have to completely blow. Like, they were able to keep Bosa and Mac.
Yeah, it's not so bad.
Yeah, right. It actually didn't turn out as bad of a rebuild as you thought it might be. And they're going to be an offensive line too. So, they're going to run the ball and they're going to be able to throw the ball as long as they got somebody that can catch it out there. And interesting team there. Probably less of a surprise than the Titans for me.
100%. Yeah, there's a lot of hype, and their Vegas win totals much higher than Tennessee's.
What about the Arizona Cardinals?
I was going to throw them out there. I mean, if McCaffrey gets hurt and Bosa gets hurt and they win 9 games, I mean, like, good teams are going to get injured. I think that's factors in here for one of these other supposed bad teams that take.
Yeah, so in that scenario for the Cardinals, you got to leapfrog where the Seahawks are at with a new coaching staff in town and where the Los Angeles Rams are, who just lost the best defensive player in football. And so,
Stafford gets hurt, or
and he's kind of his arm's kind of barely hanging on,
right.
Years, so that could happen pretty easily. So, and you don't have to win the division to get to the playoffs either.
Right. And then in the NFC, I think you could have a surprise Cardinals wild card team, something like that.
They've added.
I don't think the Bears count.
You would have to. Yeah, the Bears are almost more expected now. There's a lot of pressure on the young Bears because now it's like, okay, Justin Fields had an awful situation, didn't expect much. Everyone expects it now from the new Bears roster, and you start getting fired if they're really bad, at least for 2 years, right? And people expect the Bears to be good pretty much right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So playoffs probably shouldn't be a shock, even though I would not pick them necessarily to make the playoffs today.
Like, I don't know if their head coach comes back if they win 6 games or 7 games. Like that, there's expectations now. You can't just be bad again.
Certainly, I'll put it this way for the Bears: Eberflus is not their head coach if they're bad halfway through 2025, like mid-season.
Maybe not.
When we finish the season.
Like, I don't think the Giants or Commanders could get there. Do the Vikings count?
Actually, I think Commanders is a really good one. I think just everything in the entire building feels different.
The weight is lifted.
Commanders, right?
The air is sweeter.
Young quarterback that could, again, change the dynamic immediately there. Similar to the Titans is, do they have enough on defense, and can they cover guys, and then offensively, I think they do a little bit with a rookie quarterback, but it's a lot to ask for a rookie quarterback too.
It is. I just look at pass rush, O-line, a lot of change. But if Jalen Daniels is rookie of the year, he doesn't have to be Stroud, but if he's like rookie of the year-ish, maybe. And, I could definitely see the Cowboys and Eagles potentially taking a step back.
Those two teams could possibly disappoint.
They could.
It'd be a surprise team.
Oh, of course.
You wouldn't project the Washington Commanders to make the playoffs.
Of course. None of these, but I mean, we're talking real surprises. And one of them will make it. Tennessee might be my favorite.
Carolina Panthers, Matt.
Well, that would be a surprise. Yeah. The division's bad enough that they could win the division. I'd be shocked if they're a wild card.
Would you rather be, and obviously I think I would buy stock in Washington over Carolina. Carolina's path a lot easier because of the division. Would you rather be Washington in a more difficult division, or Carolina and with an easier path? If the bet was how many games out of the playoffs do you finish? No, because then wild card doesn't matter. Which team is further out of first place in their division, Washington or Carolina at the end of the season?
That's a tough call, because you could see, I mean, I said some bad things about the Eagles and Dallas, but they could still win 13 games, and Washington win 6, and then you're down by a lot.
Right. And the Carolina Panthers could win 4 games and still be 5 out.
Right, and still win the bet. I still think Commanders have a better chance at the playoffs, though.
I think so too. Yeah, because you're playing against the conference and not your division. 3 teams to go from the East.
Yeah, or Dak gets hurt, or Hurts gets hurt, or whatever.
I think those are my picks. I like that for surprise teams. Tennessee in the AFC.
Yeah. And they have to be long shots, folks. Don't give me the Steelers or somebody that sneaks in every year. Yeah.
Steelers should be, but because of how they finish every year, you got to project them to be an 8 or 9.
They don't surprise anybody. Right. They do the same thing every year.
Next, let's talk quarterbacks that are under the most pressure in 2024 and more from the Peacock and Williamson mailbag. So which quarterbacks, and by the way, I don't think we gave credit to the question asker for the surprise playoff team. That was Jared on Twitter. Let's go to Michael on Twitter, who says, which quarterback has the most pressure on him to stay healthy in 2024 to ensure he's starting in 2025? Aaron Rodgers, Richardson, Tua, absent a contract, somebody else? What do you think? I think even if you take the stay healthy out of this, I think a lot of the similar quarterbacks are under the similar amount of pressure, and obviously getting hurt really hurts anybody who's trying to get a new contract. So if you talk about, Brock Purdy is another one. Brock Purdy has his first offseason in the NFL as a healthy starter, where he's working out right now, because he had, he was a 7th round guy, thrust into action as a rookie. He had the elbow surgery last offseason, didn't start practicing at all until training camp. And now he's going to be, after year 3, angling for a new contract, potentially $50 million. So maybe nobody has more riding on him than Brock Purdy being the dude this year and staying healthy. That's really important for him, because he could get it might be a couple $100 million on the line, $300 million on the line. I have no idea what that contract might look like. And for Tua, I think his deal will be done. So I would
that's what I was going to say. Yeah. But if that's the difference.
Then
but you got to live up to it. You don't want to sign a huge deal and then get hurt or be terrible.
But the pressure, a little less pressure once you sign that, and you're like, okay, I've got.
It's a little better feeling, right? I mean, if Jared Goff gets hurt tomorrow, then
guarantees now. So
yes, I mean, the answer is everybody, of course. But I look at certainly young quarterbacks, like if Kenny Pickett was still a Steelers starter, it's like put up or shut up, like those guys. And the one I came up with for that kind of regard is Daniel Jones. Like, can you show the league you're still a starter? Like, I'm not saying you have to be Mahomes, but are you still a starter, or are you going to go the way of Mariota and Wentz and those type of dudes?
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
You have 1 year to show us.
That's a really good one. Daniel Jones, massive year for him. And, he defines how he'll be treated for the rest of his career.
And I always think Steelers, but I think Russell Wilson too. Like, can you revive your legacy? And I was looking at teams that have potentially really good backups that are banging on the door too. Like, wouldn't take much to say Fields is better than Wilson, and then Wilson goes the way of Luke McCown. Like he never gets a shot again.
There's some pressure on both those guys in Pittsburgh.
He could be Flacco before you know it.
Mm-hmm. There is some pressure on Rodgers, and it's not about payment or the rest of his career. It's about, is this the end? And you're in the New York market, and there's expectations for you. So, like this might be the last year of Aaron Rodgers' career, right? This could be the end, or he's rewriting
Jeopardy or
his story and hoisting a Lombardi. Like that's a very different end to a career for Aaron Rodgers.
Is Derek Carr already in the Daniel Jones boat? I think he's better off than Jones. But if he has a bad year, will he be a starter a year from now? Maybe not.
He would have to be pretty phenomenal to not be stopgap territory next year, no matter what.
Yeah.
That's how he'll be looked at. Nobody's gonna pay Carr to be the savior, but I think he'll have plenty of suitors either way to be like, okay, we're gonna draft the guy, but we're gonna start Carr for a year.
Like when he hits, like after the season, we might look at him more like he's Jacoby Brissett than Kirk Cousins.
Yes, I would put money that he's sub Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, hold down the fort while we draft a guy.
Right. Richardson is a really good one though, because he lost time his rookie year. He's not, he didn't play that much in college. And you look at what happened to someone like Trey Lance. If that happens again to Richardson, that could be, all of a sudden now you're trying to figure out quarterback again. If you're the Colts, now you're on a different roster. And once you're on a new roster and you didn't perform on your rookie contract for the team that drafted you, that's a completely different career path.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure people are screaming at the TV right now or at their screen right now saying, Dak Prescott, he's going to be a free agent. But he could get hurt like Kirk Cousins and blow out his Achilles and still get paid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He's fine.
There is pressure in Dallas because, it might be the last run there. You got to win. And, he could make himself even more money by staying healthy and being great. But if you're ranking them via pressure, less pressure there than some of the others we mentioned.
Yeah. He's going to be a starter next year almost no matter what.
And you look at someone like, Richardson in Indianapolis, it's like the pressure is huge because you haven't done it yet. And so there's the extra amount of like young player pressure, expectation pressure, what your future is going to be pressure. Dak's like, whatever, I'm good. I know how to play football. I'm going to go perform.
I got a ton of money in the bank. I got this. I'm over the hump, And you could say you could say guys like Caleb Williams.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of pressure on him, but he could be awful and then be like, whatever, okay, yeah, happens as a rookie year too. Let's see it again.
Right. Bryce Young's getting another shot.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of pressure on Bryce Young. Right. Now I think about it, yeah.
That pressure got ratcheted up in year two. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no more excuses anymore. You better be average.
Why? This one from Bonilla X. We're getting pretty close to Bobby Bonilla Day, by the way, where he gets
nice
yearly payment. Why is Justin Simmons still not on an NFL roster, man?
I wonder if that's his choice at this point. Like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to pick my spot. I'm sure he's gotten offers. I don't think there's some injury that none of us know about. I mean, I think he'll be a starting safety when he chooses to be. He probably overvalued himself when he got, out there. But
yeah, I think that's a big part of it. It's tough to secure the bag, as they say, for NFL safeties right now. And so he didn't get that,
he plays the wrong position too.
He didn't get signed day one of free agency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that means, okay, you play the waiting game, see who's going to give you that offer that you want, that you're asking for. And if you're not willing to bring it down, then you're still a free agent. And then at this point, now you wait because now you see what the best spot is. Maybe somebody gets hurt, maybe it was before camp, and you don't want to rush to go to OTAs anyway. So, I think there might be some his choice, some, well, if I'm going to drop my price, I'm going to wait and pick my spot later and see how that looks. And maybe there's an even better spot than there was in, April.
Now, hypothetical, just sticking in his old division. Maybe the Raiders have an offer on the table for him now that's adequate and you could take it. But the Chiefs keep calling and say, hey,
like if he's going to take a flyer deal, a show me deal, and the money's not there, go chase a ring. It's not like he's going to go play for the Panthers for less. He's going to play for the Chiefs for less. Or
he doesn't need a prove it deal as much as he needs his spot, you know.
Mhm.
And I think he's the best one out there for that. Like you could talk about Gilmore, the corner, or a couple other unemployed dudes, but Simmons is the one that's like unemployed now that I think could go to the Pro Bowl this year.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And I
Yeah.
think he's got a lot of good football left, and he just plays the wrong position. Didn't get that money early in free agency.
Yeah, he will. I mean, he'll be fine.
Thanks, everybody, for getting involved in this week's Peacock and Williamson mailbag. Every Wednesday throughout the offseason, we'll be doing it up and hitting your questions at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Tag us on Twitter when you drop those questions anytime. Or, of course, you can drop a question in the YouTube comments as well. Make sure you subscribe while you're there. You can subscribe anywhere you are listening to this podcast. Matt and I back tomorrow, right here, Peacock and Williamson.